Right, guys, this image changes absolutely everything for Liverpool next season, and the reason is really exciting. So, as we know, Darwin Nunez came from Benfica to the Big Reds, and it's going to be frightening with him and Luis Diaz for real this season. But why? Well, in this video, we're going to tell you exactly why Liverpool's midfield revolution will change everything for Liverpool's number 9 next season. That's right, we're back in Nunez this year. So our boy Darwizzy blew hot and cold last season, and that was to be expected to a point, really, when you look at the season that Liverpool had as a whole and how the real form didn't emerge until later on in the season. His stats last season were 9 goals, 3 assists, from 12.1 XG and 5.4 expected assists. So when you cross-reference his underlying numbers with his, top-line stats last season, you generally feel like he underperformed, but it felt like there was a lot of room for growth, I think, with him. His conversion rate in particular, I thought was clearly poor, right? Only 11%, which is a massive drop-off, a huge drop-off. When you think of what he did at Benfica, where he averaged 31%, which is fantastic. But as we said in a video last year, we felt like he was maybe a little bit too good to be true when it came to that conversion rate. 31% is incredibly high. So you may think that this doesn't bode well for Liverpool or for Nunez next season. Well, that's where you're wrong. Now, steady goes, because you're going to have to strap yourself in for this one. To the tactics board! So Darwin Nunez, one thing I want to talk about is his hold-up play. There were problems with hold-up play, and that came from the system that Liverpool were playing, which had been really successful for them, but they were trying to move forward from it. And again, this was something that we spoke about in a video at the start of last season. Darwin Nunez is not Firmino. This is from a game against Brentford, and Darwin Nunez is playing in that central striker position, and he's dropping deep to help and try and get the ball. Now, there's a reason for this, but his hold-up play is not his main strength. And in this scenario, he actually tries to play a pass to Mohamed Salah, fails to do that. It's a simple 5-yard pass, but for whatever reason, he doesn't feel comfortable in that position there. But you can understand why he was asked to do it, and also why they kind of looked to get someone like JaackMaate through the door last season, because they didn't have that number 10. And time and again, Liverpool fans, I'm sure you'll let us all know in the comments down below, there was this huge gap in the middle of the pitch every single time. Fabinho didn't seem to have the legs anymore, but in particular, this was a team that was renowned for kind of having that false 9, that Firmino, and that player that was happy to drop deep into these areas to allow those other runners to move forward and go beyond him. But you have to be confident in that position. And that pass accuracy for Darwin Nunez of 61%, as opposed to someone like Firmino, whose pass accuracy last season was 76%. Now, I know Darwin Nunez was playing on the left wing at times, but that should probably actually help with some of the passing accuracy. And I think this led to a real confidence blow. It was, it was a stumbly season for Liverpool in general. That sending off in the second game didn't help as well. But if we have a look at this second screenshot, this is from one of the last games of the season. Once again, you kind of see him virtually dropping into midfield. He doesn't want to be there. He's an absolute waste there, if I'm honest, as well. You want him, if he's going to be playing centre forward, you want him in this area here so that he can actually affect the game. Now, fortunately, Jurgen Klopp figured it out pretty quickly and kind of made that move and made that change. And that's where you saw the benefits of his brilliance, his movement, his pace, and his, I guess, poacher's instinct to a point. Maybe if the finishing conversion rate isn't there, but at least getting into those right areas, which is something that Liverpool fans screamed about throughout the season. So for the second half of the season, we saw him play on the left wing a hell of a lot more. And this is a game against Real Madrid where we saw some really nice elements from him. And actually, obviously against a very high level opponent in Real Madrid. And him being able to start in this wide area was so much more beneficial for him, because he could see kind of everything that was in front of him, but also he was able to utilize his pace and his movement. And I think another thing to remember here is the influence of this right-hand side. These players are very, very important to Liverpool. So again, the space will be on that left-hand side, and in time, it will be in the area that he knows he wants it to be, which is in that penalty box. This is one of the cheekiest finishes that you saw throughout the Champions League last season, and it shows an instinctive understanding of how to score a goal. But importantly, I think, the fact that he gets to see the whole pitch. I think when you're right in the middle of it, that can be difficult. I think we've seen that maybe with someone like Trent, who's now moving in there, and that's been part of his evolution. But from that right back position, you can often see the entirety of the game. And that's something that Darwin Nunez on that left-hand side was able to do, and you're able to utilise his movement a little bit better and see some really good chances, and he gets himself a goal. I've been waiting to use that one. Let's talk about the Liverpool recruitment, because I think that's, that midfield rebuild is the first domino to fall when it comes to the second coming of Darwin Nunez, and why, as we've just spoken about, he didn't thrive because he didn't really suit the system, but now they're creating a system that should suit him much better by filling that gap, that 10-8 role, and Szoboszlai and McAllister are two great players for it. Let's start off with Szoboszlai, who last season had some incredible stats when it came to shot creating actions, 5.52 per 90. But what I also liked about him was his kind of versatility, but also I think probably his desire to play in this area of the pitch. That's a crucial element for him. Often played in a 4-2-2-2, and that allowed him to go out wide, but also play in that 10 role as well. He also had the capability of playing out on the left as well. So anywhere along these lines, but in these half spaces, he feels really comfortable and is able to operate. And that's going to be crucial for Darwin Nunez, who wants to focus himself, as I've said numerous bloody times, in that penalty area. So how will Szoboszlai, first of all, implement himself into the team? Well, I think Liverpool are going to go to a 3-2-5. That seems very obvious to me, and that's a massive change from what we've seen previously. They've obviously been a 4-3-3 team, and even last season they generally stuck with that until the last few weeks of the season, which we'll get into in just a second. But I think Matip is coming to the end. The future's bright, the future's Konaté. They're going to move to a back three here, and of course Trent is going to move into the midfield. Fabinho is going to make his way out. There's going to be a brand new DM at the time of recording. That DM, we don't know who that's going to be. Bajcetic, I think, has got obviously a huge future for the club, as does Jones, who's been brilliant in the summer. But McAllister will naturally come in, and we'll talk about his profile in just a second. But on this right-hand side, Henderson, who did a lot of sort of donkey work, but also would find himself here a lot of the time if Salah wanted to get involved. Actually, with someone like Szoboszlai, you will get some similar elements, but again with a player that feels that little bit more comfortable in those areas as well. I also think it's going to be a big change when it comes to Diaz, of course, being fit again, and that leads to Nunez and Gakpo to battle it out a little bit. But with the introduction of McAllister and Szoboszlai, Nunez feels like a really good fit in this striker position. Gakpo, let's take him out for now, but again, look, it's a squad game, isn't it, these days? He's going to have a really important part to play. But in terms of Szoboszlai and his movement, he's going to be in that 8 role. He's got that number 8. He's got that Gerrard tattoo. But he will have a really important to play with Salah and with Alexander-Arnold. But he will have a couple of things that he needs to do here, really, because Szoboszlai will need to play in that 10 role quite a lot. And I think it will be really important for him to stay high. He will want to get wide, a bit like Henderson did as well. And he offered that at Leipzig. So those two areas are really important. He's going to have to do the work to get back. But what's different this year is you have that double pivot of Alexander-Arnold stepping in and the defensive midfielder who inevitably will reveal himself in good time. And actually, we've done a video talking about defensive midfielders, 10 different options. It's on the channel right now. Go and check it out. But Szoboszlai will be tasked with being high up the pitch. That's going to be a really, really important thing for him. But in terms of those shot creating actions, we'll show you in a second. The passing range and options, they all lead to Nunez. Alexis McAllister was another deal that was done early in the window for Liverpool. Different player to Szoboszlai, but someone who can play as a 6, as an 8, as a 10. And his lack of assists for Brighton could actually be a reason why he thrives, and importantly, Darwin Nunez thrives next season. So the thing with McAllister is, and I've got him here in this 3-2-5 that we were talking about, but if we move it back together just that little bit more, let Szoboszlai drop in. McAllister will focus in this area of the pitch. But what's great about him is for Brighton last year, and in terms of those low assists, the reason he had low assists was sometimes he would play as a 10, sometimes he would play as an 8, who would kind of get forward and get back. Also, sometimes he would play as a bit of a 6, dropping deep as well, and that led to that sort of low amount of assists. But I think he'll facilitate the connection up the pitch as well on that left-hand side in particular, because you've got someone like Alexander-Arnold who maybe in a defensive setting starts over on that right-hand side. The DM, yes, you want him to get involved, and yes, you want someone like McAllister to maybe to allow them to break through the lines sometimes in terms of Robertson or, you know, or Van Dijk in terms of that play, and also allowing the DM to be that decoy. But his connection and his ability to play 6, 8, 10, I think is going to be really important in terms of being a bit of a backboard for the team. He'll be able to, you know, work the ball up the pitch. Yes, he might be able to play that killer pass to someone like Darwin Nunez as well, but I think he'll bring it all together. And actually, there will be a ripple effect. Great podcast is out on Spotify right now for Diaz as well, because Diaz will be able to stay higher up the pitch because you've got someone that's just so confident in those half spaces, in that area, higher up the pitch. And because he's higher up the pitch and you can trust him with the football, Diaz will be able to stay higher up the pitch as well. And importantly, you've now got yourself a front five that are able to go beyond in terms of Salah. Szoboszlai can do that as well. Szoboszlai can put in crosses. McAllister can put in crosses. The creativity is all there. Diaz likes to actually cut inside and might use him as a backboard, but he's happy to go to the byline as well. So many different options here for a team that's going to play in the opposition's final third. So this image holds the key as to why I think that Darwin Nunez will score 20 goals this season. I know it's a U-turn, guys. I know it is. But the system's different. And that 3-2-5, that obviously comes from Pep. It's forced Klopp to copy it, because if it works, then it's worth it. And when you've got someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold, who we've not really spoken about yet, you have to utilise him. In the second half of the season, last 7 weeks of the season, he went into that midfield role. And he had so many touches. But importantly, what it offered up as well was it created a 4-man midfield. And that 4-man midfield was really important because, first of all, it made it very, very difficult for the defensive line of the opposition. Because the defensive line found themselves struggling to deal with the movement of two players, these two. This is Curtis Jones and Milner, I think, in this instance. And because of those two players, you have a line here of midfielders for Leeds, and they don't really know what to do. And that leads to, one, freezing them somewhat, but they're frozen because of the positioning of these two. And the fact that those two are where? Yep, you guessed it, in those half spaces. That means that Trent then has all of this area, because if any of those players come out, it's very, very easy for someone of his quality to play someone like Curtis Jones in or someone like Milner in. They're wary of getting close to him because they can play it through those lines, and he can do that so brilliantly. Also, he had that, ability to spray the passes left and right as well. And so there was a real sort of freezing and a concern from the opposition of Trent, where he was allowed the ball, but it was actually often one of the strikers who needed to come back to try and help close down someone like Trent. So if you think of the exchange here and change of players, Curtis Jones put to one side because I think he's a really exciting player, but swap Milner and swap Curtis Jones with someone like Szoboszlai and McAllister, and you've got something really exciting. And what's really important when it comes to this image is the body language of our boy Darwin Nunez. What you can see there is the fact that, and I can probably zoom in on him, let's give it a go. Yeah, there he is. Look at his body language. He doesn't want to get involved in the build-up play. He doesn't need to get involved in the build-up play. He knows what he wants to do. He wants to play on the last shoulder because he's got a world-class player in Trent Alexander-Arnold trying to help him out there. And what happens? Look, it is 5-1, I know, but the pass comes because despite looking like there's not the option there, someone's really special in terms of Trent Alexander-Arnold. Darwin Nunez gets to do what he's great at, play on the shoulder, cause havoc, be a nuisance. And that was a big moment, a big moment, because it worked in terms of pattern of play, it froze the opposition, and it allowed Darwin Nunez to work in the areas where he is at his absolute best, which is in behind the opposition. Trent is such a force in terms of his vision and ability there, and you want to use every drop of that. And that's why the DM is going to be really important. And there could be an alternative here in terms of how they set up, because you just want to get the most out of that creativity. Because in terms of these three and the passing ability, it's so exciting. And so you might see something where Szoboszlai plays in more of a 10 position. That might be something that we see, you know, because we want to allow Trent to be a little bit higher up the pitch. So Szoboszlai could play in that 10 almost as a second striker. He'd be very confident and competent at that. And then that allows someone like Trent to be a lot higher up the pitch. And how many times have we seen Trippier or KDB put great crosses into the box? Darwin Nunez could get a lot of joy at that back stick by peeling away and just staying away from play. You've also got McAllister who can get involved here. And in terms of the creativity and the passing ability, I don't think can be underestimated what Alexander-Arnold can do in terms of bringing in other people into play. Szoboszlai is going to look to play those passes. McAllister with Diaz, and Diaz as well will look to, you know, get those crosses in, I think, at times as well. Is happy to cut inside as well. All roads lead to to Darwin Nunez. If you think of that comparison with Haaland, the big thing when it comes to these two, and it's there in the stats, Haaland only averaged 24.8 touches per 90 last season and scored all of those goals. The guy was a joke, right? But that is the least amount of touches he's ever had in a season in his career. 14 of those touches were in the final third. 7 of those touches were in the penalty box. So 50% of his touches in the final third were in the penalty box. Keep that in mind, because Darwin Nunez was very different. 21.9 touches in the final third. So more touches in the final third, but only 8.19 in the penalty box. Slightly down to him being a left winger, but generally him not being in the penalty box. That's 37% of his touches in the final third being in the penalty box. My point is, the higher the percentage of touches that Darwin Nunez is having in the penalty box from his final third touches, the more goals he will score. Mark my words. And the way that this team is set up means that that percentage is only going one way, up. So with all these factors considered, it feels like there's a real platform for Darwin Nunez next season. How many goals is he going to score though? Let me know in the comments down below if you like this one. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time, will I? Maybe.